Welcome to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island. Free-flowing talk with a charismatic, down-to-earth host. Join Dean as he interviews and chats freely with his guests, ranging from superstar athletes to politicians, industry titans, and everyday folk with fascinating life stories. Dean educates, entertains, and most of all, touches people's lives. You're listening to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dean Blechman Show. And this is your host, Dean. Good morning, Anthony. How are you today?
I'm very good, Dean. Thank you for having me join you guys.
Good. All the way from Lake Worth, Florida. On the line with us today is Myra Goldick, who is an inspirational speaker, author, talk show host, professional artist, disability advocate, and reinvention coach. Myra, how are you today?
I'm fabulous. Good morning, all.
Unbelievable. All the way from Lake Worth, Florida. How's the weather down in Florida?
Sunny and gorgeous. How's the weather in Long Island?
We have a beautiful, beautiful October fall day here. Really beautiful weather in the high 50s. The trees this time of the year is the most beautiful I find anywhere in the United States. Just absolutely beautiful.
I agree with you. I used to live in upstate New York, and we lived in Campbell Hall, which is right outside of Goshen. And in the evening, when I would come home after work, it would look like the trees were lit up. It was so gorgeous on a sunny day. Every color from vibrant yellow to deep gold to red. And it used to take my breath away. And I had a 600-foot driveway that went up a hill. So I had plenty of time to take in the gorgeous fall decorations.
Well, all I know is that we have enough to talk about today about your story that we could go on for 3 or 5 hours. And I think what we'll do is just talk about as much as we can today. And I think you'll be back again as a guest many times. And I just want to give a little plug to your son-in-law, Matt, that my favorite car wash, I'll give a little plug to, called Touch of Class in Smithtown. Speaks for itself, the type of class they are and the beautiful son-in-law you have in Matt. So I want to thank him for introducing me to you.
Thank you, and I agree with you. I'm very fortunate to have such a warm and giving son-in-law.
He's quite a guy. He's quite a young man. And, your mission is to enhance people's lives by spreading creative energy to others. And very much the theme when I decided to do the radio show, and, all my life for about 3 decades at Twin Lab, we made some great nutritional products that people throughout the world consumed, that I wanted to do that with my radio show with just a different medium and impact people's lives. And your story fits so much in with what my show is, and that's to educate, inspire, motivate, and enhance people's lives. And your story is just one that's remarkable. That's nothing short of that. So, if you don't mind, just going back from what I've learned from you, a little bit about your childhood, just growing up, if you could just share just a little bit of time on that. You grew up in a very unusual family. I'd say there's quite a bit of dysfunctionality that I've heard and read, and then obviously by being struck by polio at such a young age. If you don't mind just sharing with the audience a little bit about your youth.
Absolutely, no problem. Yes, I did grow up in what would be considered a dysfunctional family life. I don't think they called it that way back then. We've become a little more sophisticated with our description of children who are in situations which we would not consider ideal. My mother was an Austrian who had been married, but she was, I would say, upper middle class. The class structure in Europe was very different than it is in America. although I'm beginning to wonder about that lately. And she came here after a divorce, and for some reason, she had met my father in Europe, I think London. He was a performer. He was from the islands, just a 360-degree difference in backgrounds. But when she came here to the United States, for some reason, whatever the reason, she ended up marrying my father and sailing off to the islands with my father. And now this was right at the beginning of World War II. My father is multiracial. My mother was 100% European background, Austrian, Italian, Hungarian. And it was a rather unusual union, and one that proved to be rather challenging, and another failure, because she ended up with 2 children and a broken marriage back in New York, because my father's career, he was much older than her, which had been rather successful early on, was really failing by this point. And maybe they both had 2 different reasons for marrying. Maybe he thought she would be of help to him. I have no idea. But when I entered the world, it was already broken. By 5, they were separated, and my mother, my brother, and I were pretty much homeless. We ended up in welfare hotels and single room occupancies, shared kitchens, bathrooms. And moving a lot, because, if you don't pay your rent, they kick you out and you lose all your belongings. So it was a pretty difficult beginning, and I had serious, I guess, self-esteem issues by that time already, being rather different. And different was really not as common way back then, if you think about it, the way it is today. You see just about every combination of ethnic backgrounds in our society today, but back then you didn't really. So I had my issues, and at age 10, I came down with full-blown paralytic polio. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's a virus. It's like a flu. However, it attacks the central nervous system. There are 3 kinds. There's paralytic, there's bulbar, and there's non-paralytic polio. I had the paralytic type, and it went straight up the spinal cord to my central nervous system, paralyzing just about every part of my body. So from a healthy, active little girl, I became pretty much a little girl that would be considered an invalid with wheelchair, braces, crutches. And I'm not going to say that's the worst thing in the world. It's pretty shocking, pretty scary, but I survived. And it was a long recovery, surgeries. But by the time, and I'm going to take this to a more positive level, by the time I was 17, and I'm not going to tell you how difficult it was. I mean, does everybody remember 13 and being acceptable and being part of? And well, I was exact opposite. I was the invisible girl in school when I finally returned to school after 3 years. But by the time I was 17, I had gotten rid of the braces, the crutches, the cane, everything. I had a slight limp. It was very deceptive, because polio is one of the only neurological diseases that literally fools you into believing that you're really, truly regaining muscle strength. And I want to make it clear, if your muscle has been, let's call it the muscle neuron, if it's been damaged or if it's been killed, you can't revive it. If it's been damaged, it grows sprouts, almost like a tree that has a thick trunk, but is rotting on the inside, and there's still little branches that come out. So you think there's hope for that tree, and eventually one day it just falls over. Well, that's what happens with polio. It fools you into believing that you have regained all your strength, or almost all your strength. And what do? You keep overusing those semi-active sprouts that send messages to your central nervous system that say, okay, now you can do this and you can do that. And eventually what happens is you develop post-polio syndrome. Not everyone, but most people do. And when it does come back, it comes back with a vengeance. And it's a very difficult thing to accept. But I had the most wonderful, starting from a very tough beginning, I ended up with a very wonderful, successful life. 25 years in corporate America, cosmetics, dealing with some of the biggest industry leaders. And then when I developed post-polio, I'm an artist. I was trained as an artist. I went to Batchin Institute on a scholarship.
I know it's very clear. It's very clear that the power of creativity, Myra, saved your life.
Yes, it saved my life, and it became my life, because even in the cosmetic industry, it was part of it. And then I became a millinery designer. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, because if it's not a baseball hat, we don't wear it, but it's a millinery designer. I designed hats for people like Oscar de la Renta and wonderful, wonderful celebrated designers. So I've had a fabulous life. I can't complain about a thing.
What's remarkable about your life, even if you take polio away from your life, most people don't have the type of life that you've had to date.
I think there's something that happens when you have a severe challenge early on in life. You learn to fight. It's like swim or sink. And you become very aware of that. There's no time for self-pity or anything. There's time to get better and grab every moment that you can from life. And I think it's something that happens to very young children. I mean, we all hear these stories of children that have had terrible life-threatening illnesses, and they become stronger and better people and more anxious to make the best out of every moment of every day.
You know, if people go to your website, MyraGoldick.com, GOLDICK.com, Myra, MYRA, it's just an unbelievable, inspirational story, your entire life, how you inspire, educate, motivate, you know, how you dealt with adversity, depression, such tremendous positive energy, you know, procrastination, you know, your secrets for happiness. I mean, there's a lot of motivational speakers out there, but, you know, you really seem to really set yourself apart from the rest.
Well, I really want to tell the truth and be as transparent as I can. I think that no one that I know of is immune to disappointments in life. And when you have disappointments or unexpected challenges, it does bring you down. And that's okay. You're allowed your 5 minutes of self-pity. But you have to remember, and I think this is something that is extremely important for people to remember, particularly as they age, I'm a senior now, is that no one comes to a pity party. Even if you serve imported wine and cheese, you're going to eat that cheese alone. because it's a downer for people. And they want to see the positive side of life. They need to see it because they're struggling with their own issues. There isn't a person that doesn't have a story. And how big or how small that story is doesn't matter. It's how they perceive it. So even if it's a person who on the outside seemingly seems to have everything, we don't know that for sure. I have to tell you one little story. When I moved to Florida, I was taking an art class in a local art school. It was the Boca Art School. And they run consecutive classes for 8 weeks through a season that lasts about, 9 months, I would say. And I decided to take the class in the middle. And I'm very aware, having been a student in many places throughout my life, that people are territorial. So, and if you remember back to school, no matter how long ago it was, if you were not assigned a seat, perhaps in college, and you went to a lecture hall, if you always sat on the right side of the room, 3 rows from the front of the classroom, that's where you gravitated to every single time. So knowing that, I went to the class and I had my canvas, my paints. It's a whole big deal I had to drag with me. And I was very early because mobility is a real struggle for me. And I went early so that I wouldn't be in the mad rush when everybody's setting up. And I said to myself, I can't just take any seat, even though they're open, because I know how people feel. So I went to the corner of the room, the darkest, ugliest corner of the room near the garbage can, and I set up my equipment and my canvas, and I'm sitting in the corner, and I figured nobody would want to sit here. Nobody. And I see the classrooms filling up and people are coming in and there's chatter, and I don't really know anybody. Some people were cordial and said hello. Other people ignored me. And I waited. The class began at 9. And I waited to actually open up my paints and set out my brushes until about 10 after 9, when I was sure nobody was going to walk over to me and say, "You're sitting in my seat."
Wow. Wow.
Well, let me tell you what happened. At 9:20, I see this beautiful girl walking in, designer sweatsuit, just absolutely lovely designer carriage for all her paints and equipment. And oh my word, she's walking towards me. She comes over and she says, "You are sitting in my seat." I couldn't believe it. And I, a little ashamed, admittedly got defensive. And I said, "Well, if you were on time, I wouldn't have been sitting in your seat. But I'm here and I'm set up and it's not my problem." Fortunately for me, the people around me moved everything.
Wow.
But I have to tell you what I found out about her. Now, I'm looking at her saying, bean sprout eating, over-exercised, third wife, Mercedes driving. This is my opinion of her. And do you know what I found out by the end of the class? She had 3 children at home, 2 autistic and 1 Down syndrome.
Wow. Wow.
No wonder she was late.
Wow.
And, you can't judge a book by its cover, and making assumptions about people is really foolish. You have to find out who the person is before you assume anything. So guilty.
Listen, Myra, I got to tell the audience that not only are you a reinvention coach, but your art illustrations are just off the wall. I mean, they're incredible. I mean that you majored in fashion illustration at New York's Fashion Institute of Technology. that you had such a love of art that you developed at the young age of 5 years old, that at 5, you actually won a coloring contest in the New York Daily News. Incredible.
Well, that's a funny story, because when you live the kind of childhood we did, with every kind of undesirable that ever crawled out from under a rug as a neighbor, you really don't have friends. I grew up without girlfriends, and when you move from school to school, I really I didn't have enough time to make friends, and I wouldn't want to bring them to my home anyway. So my best friends were my coloring books and my crayons. And when you think about it, crayons are like people.
Wow.
Some are colorful and bright, some are broken, some are dull. And that was my way of life. And when my mother said, "Hey, you want to join this contest?" At 5, what the heck did I know? I said, "Yeah, Mom."
Well, I'm looking at
one. Wow.
Anthony and I are looking at your art gallery right now. It's just magnificent, and it didn't even stop there. That it's incredible that you still went on even after that to the prestigious High School of Music and Art, and that upon graduation, you actually received a full scholarship to the Fashion Institute of Technology, where you studied fashion illustration. I mean, it just goes on and on about you.
And these portraits, the artwork is just
Anthony,
incredible.
isn't it beautiful?
It's amazing. Your work
just gorgeous.
We have this. We have your site up on the screen now. We're looking, and it's just absolutely
beautiful. You know, Myra, that I've only known you for a short time, and not only are you beautiful inside, you know, I never ask a woman her age, and you are a beautiful woman. You really are.
Thank you. I never hide it, because all you have to do is Google me, and everything I ate for breakfast comes up.
Well, I never ask a woman her age unless you want to mention it to the audience. I never ask the age.
I don't mind at all. I'm 73 and proud.
Unbelievable, Myra.
Wow.
I can't believe it. If anyone would go to your video clips, your website, your radio shows that you've done, I mean, just remarkable that you're that age. You're a beautiful woman, and I just want to let you know that this topic, what really hit me big time, was the topic of disability, because I have some people that are on my list that I have tremendous respect for and that I idolize. You've joined that list now. And I just want to mention some of those people that really stand out, because disability, I mean, Stevie Wonder is right at the top of my list, the great singer, composer, writer, Stevie Wonder. I mean, as a past president, FDR, I mean, also polio, just a great legend, and someone that I have tremendous respect for. Recently, the actress Marley Moulton, just a tremendous Academy Award actress, who's been deaf since she was 18 months old. I mean, I could go on and on. Helen Keller, just people with disability that go on in life and career and just become tremendous people that impact people's lives. I have idolized and have tremendous respect for them. So you've joined that list.
Well, thank you. And I don't know if most people understand or know the history of the word disabled and how it came to be. But in the 1900s, they were still using very negative words to describe people who had challenges or impairments of some kind. And they started using the word, as time went on, handicapped, which to me is a better word than disabled. But what happened in the 70s, 80s, leading into the 90s is that the community of people that had challenges were very angry about the lack of respect they were getting from society. And there was a movement that they created called the disability movement, which ultimately led to the passing of the ADA Act, Americans with Disabilities. However, in my opinion, the word actually backfired, because when you think about it, what do you see when you use the word disabled? It doesn't work. It's broken.
Right.
It's a very negative word. You don't really think about that when you use the word handicapped or challenged or impaired. So in this movement, which was very successful in terms of getting access to people who had sighted issues or mobility issues, it worked against them actually in the employment arena. The disparity, the difference between employment for people with disabilities and employment for the general population is huge. And there's a reason for that. It's because the word sort of leads you to believe that that person is just not able. And I think the movement that we've seen through the Obama administration which is the 503 Act, which was to help the government contractors, or force them, let me use the language the way I should, force them to include 7% of their employees and their contractors to have at least 7%, depending on the size of the operations, such as Walmart or Target or Home Depot, depending on the size of the organization, have 7% of their staff designated as disabled. However, having said that, it has done literally nothing for small and medium-sized businesses to change the attitude or have them open the door and look at the person before they assume that this person is going to be a detriment in some way, either physically, financially, or affect their bottom line negatively in some way. Most small and medium-sized businesses don't even know that there's a slew of agencies that will literally come into your place of business and help you set up that area, that designated area where that worker is going to be, with no cost to you or minimal cost to you, so that person can work as effectively, probably more effectively, because they'll be so grateful, because no one wants to sit home and live on a disability check. No one that I've ever known, because it's next to starvation.
Wow.
So that's the history behind the word disability.
Wow. Did you know all that, Anthony? That what Myra just shared with us?
No, I wasn't aware of that, but I know I've always thought about people with disabilities and the little bit of money that they get is I don't understand how these people live. I mean, it's got to be almost impossible for them, you know.
Well, they exist rather than live. And right now I'm writing another book, and through the 5.5, 6 years that I've been doing podcasts, I've met so many wonderful people that I'm going to take some of the stories and put them in a book, more or less a handbook, proving to people, covering as many disabilities as I can, such as spina bifida, MS, or mental health issues, people who have done fabulous things with their life and transcribe it into stories, little tiny short stories that people can say, wow, I never thought of the wealth of talent that is out there that I have not tapped into.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be unbelievably grateful if they had an opportunity to have a purpose.
Wow. Well, listen, for me, only these last 3 months, that's what I love every day, is to have the opportunity to get to meet people like you and and to do very informative shows like this. So I know I've got quite a few more years to catch up to you, but I'm having the greatest time.
Not that.
I'm having the greatest time of my life doing the show.
Well, think about it. Think about it. One day it'll be your book.
And I got plenty to share. I said coming on the show today that there was going to be nothing about politics discussed. But the only and we're living in unprecedented times with this election and the campaign. It's just nauseating, sickening. I just hate it. But the only reason, Myra, I'm bringing up the campaign is because of disability and disabled. I've got to bring it up because it has been a big topic of the election and campaign made by the Republican presidential candidate. That wherever you look today on radio and TV, there's that video or audio sound of the Republican candidate mocking a reporter with a disability. It was last November, and you every day you're hearing it. And it was just shocking, and I had to bring it up. And I don't know if you have any opinion on it.
I definitely have an opinion on it. Donald Trump, who is a candidate that you're referring to.
Yeah, I didn't mention. I'm like the Obamas. I don't mention. I just mention Republican candidate. I don't mention names.
I'm mentioning it. I think he's first and foremost a performer, and whether in his heart of hearts he really feels biased against people with challenges or impairments, I don't know, nor will I ever know, because of his theatrical side and overly dramatic side. How did I feel about it? I felt it was a step backwards because bullying amongst teenagers and younger, 12, 13, 14, is an all-time high because of tweets and Facebook, which he uses in that same manner to intimidate, to bully, to criticize. So I felt very badly, and I felt that he was setting an example for a lot of the kids who feel that they are able to anonymously bully other people who may have issues or may just be on the I don't like that person list. So I think we have to be very careful what we do as people in general, to be kind and understanding of others who may not be, quote unquote, perfect in the standard that we see when we're on the grocery line and we see a magazine with the most perfectly trim human being, male or female.
Right.
And we really have to be more loving and open to others. So that's my feeling about it, without any more criticism.
You know, if you would, when you have a chance, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to my first show back in July on the 26th. It's show number 1. It was with my beautiful 89-year-old mother who doesn't live too far from you in Delray Beach, Florida, Jean Blechman, if you have a chance to listen to it. But during that show, she says she wishes the world and this country would go back to the old days of family and giving more love again.
Well, there is a problem there, and I agree with her. I think the breakup of the family is a very big challenge for us as a society. What happened to eating dinner together? What happened to that? It's all gone. Everybody's eating at their own pace and running amok, and the kids are over. I mean, I guess they're overly involved with outside activities, and there's very little family life left. You have both parents working for the most part. It's a very difficult time. And I think as we age, we begin to see what's wrong. Well, this has been going on since the beginning of time, but as we age, we become wiser and in many ways more conservative, and we want to go back to some of the ways that worked way back then. However, I don't think that's possible.
Okay. We've got a lot to talk about in a very short time. And as I said, we'd be able to do a 3 to 5 hour show with you today. I'm going to have you back again, and hopefully we're going to do many shows together. And
I want to meet your mother.
You're definitely going to beat my mom one day. She would love you. So when I'm down there, we're definitely going to get together.
Okay, cool.
Okay. I even have a great mother-in-law that lives near there in Boynton Beach as well. She's a terrific lady as well.
Oh, well, you're unique. Most people don't say that about their mother-in-laws.
My mother-in-law is a incredible and remarkable woman.
She's a sweetheart.
She's really unbelievable.
Very nice.
She's a
lady.
great lady.
Yeah.
And she's also dealt with tremendous adversity in her life that I won't get into. That my mother-in-law is, not only do I love my mother-in-law dearly, but she's one of the mentally strongest women I've ever met in my life.
Beautiful.
So, listen, I want to get on to some really important subjects that I think that if you could just spend just a couple of minutes, I know that you could probably spend a lot of time on it, but you could really hit just some key topics that I want to discuss, because there's no question about it when it comes to Myra Goldick that definitely the theme here is to be totally paralyzed at such a young age, for you to have dealt with the adversity that you had to deal with the rest of your life, that the biggest underlying thing I see here is that Myra never gave up. And I just want to touch on a couple of areas. If we could just spend a brief amount of time on it. I know that happiness is number one on your list, your greatest topic. What comes to mind right away that you could share with me, Anthony, the audience? Happiness, what comes to mind for the next 2 minutes?
Gratitude. I think we have such a need to fit in, to be above, to be as good as, and we're always looking over the fence, that we generally forget to think about what we do have and how fortunate we are simply to be born in America to begin with. I mean, I can't imagine my life if I were born in some other country to the same parents. So I think once you learn to stop thinking about what you don't have and think about what you do have and how you can use what you do have to enrich your life, whatever that is, you begin to open a world to inner happiness. Because happiness is not like this beautiful soap bubble that comes floating into your life and you reach out to touch it and it goes pop, like a brand new car. And then the car becomes old, or it gets damaged, or it's from deep within.
Wow.
And that's basically my attitude about happiness. And when you begin to understand yourself and understand what makes you tick and why maybe you get stuck on certain issues, whether it be money, love, sex, whatever it is, there's a reason for it. And when you can understand it and maybe work around it, that world of happiness begins to blossom.
Myra, I'm very glad you brought up the word sex because, because
What's that?
everything that I've read, your books, everything I've read online, all your guest appearances, all your subjects, I really don't see much, and I'm surprised that you discuss on sex and intimacy.
I've been married forever. 53 years.
How many years?
53.
Wow, I hope I meet that lucky guy one day.
Yeah, we're both lucky. We have each other. And I've had a very normal, healthy sex life. And it seems very natural to me. I'm a little bit sorry that we twist it in society to be something taboo. And in every movie you see, sometimes it has no relevant meaning within the story, but you've got to actually watch people performing the act, which sometimes is important, at other times it's not. And I think that we make a whole lot of noise about sex when it's really a natural function and it's how we survive, how our species survives, and it's always going to be here.
Wow, wow. Yeah, it's a subject that people want to talk about. So when you brought it up, the word sex, I wasn't going to bring it up. I decided to say, how come you don't discuss sex and intimacy?
Well, it's a funny thing. When you grow up like I did, I learned about it a lot earlier than most people because the people that inhabit those type of buildings are prostitutes, drug addicts, gays of all kind, mentally ill, so perverts. Oh my God. I've seen things that when you see in a movie, it's shocking. I actually saw them, witnessed them. And I guess I've never thought of sex as shocking as other people have because of my early beginnings. I know it's there and people will use it, abuse it,
Well,
and enjoy it.
let's move along. All I know is, Anthony, if you look at Myra's videos or her pictures, she doesn't look a day over 48, 49 years of age. What'd you say? You were 72, 73?
73. I was born in 43.
You're unbelievable. You don't look a day over 48, 49.
Well, thank you, but I wouldn't say that.
And I want to know, and be honest with me, who made the first move back all those years? Was it you that made the first move or your husband?
Well, if I could do this in 3 minutes. No, seriously, I hailed a cab.
Okay.
And I jumped in cab, and my husband was working his way through NYU, and he was completely, I guess, taken by me. And at the end of I didn't like him at all because I thought he was a braggart. He was telling me about all the showgirls he picks up and that he can date and this and that. And I thought he was the most obnoxious person. And talk about destiny. At the end of that ride, I had to stop and call my mother. That was in the time of payphones, and they cost 10 cents. I called my mother, and when we got to my destination, which was a show business party, I was in that crowd where Robert Goulet was going to be. I said, how much do I owe you? Whatever it was on the media, it might have been $5. And he said, $5 and the dime you borrowed from me to call your mother and your telephone number.
Wow. You and my wife Sharon have a lot in common. You know, when she first met me, she didn't like me either. So you two have a lot in common. She didn't like me at first when she met me, and this weekend we're celebrating our 35th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. I love it.
Thank you very much. Let's just move on. I know happiness is number one topic. I'm gonna just cover a few more, and if you could just spend 2-3 minutes on it. Once again, polio, your feelings on unvaccinated children, anti-vaccinated movement, just the whole area of vaccination. What's your feeling?
Okay, I think to gamble with your child's life because you misguidedly believe that vaccinations can cause autism is horrifying to me, because I went to have an MRI a couple of years ago, and the woman was about 32, 33, and she was moving me all around, and she said, well, what did this damage to you? And I told her polio. And she said, oh my God, I have a girlfriend who refuses to vaccinate her children. If she could see what it's done to you, she might change her mind. And it's not just polio, because polio is only, live polio virus is really only alive in certain countries in the Middle East. And recently they found some of it in Israel and the sewerage system. It lives in the same places it always has lived in, but vaccination is the only protection, along with other childhood diseases. So I personally believe that if you do your homework and weigh the chances that your child or even you as an adult could suffer, because whooping cough has been affecting seniors. And if a senior gets whooping cough, they just might die or end up in the hospital. So there are certain things that I feel are necessary to do. Since 1900 to 2000, life expectancy has increased by 30 years.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, people are living longer, and as they become older, like children, their immune systems weaken and they're more vulnerable.
Wow. Myra, I know that Anthony next to me, I know he's waiting anxiously to chime in here. I know this is a special subject, an area of his that he'd like to discuss a little bit.
The vaccine.
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned misguided. We had done a show on it. Not sure if you had the chance to hear it. I know there's a lot of different information out there. Being a parent myself, I could resonate with the concern. I don't know, I just wanted you to kind of elaborate on, what you said as far as the, misguided information. If you have anything specifically that you can cite, that's either, obviously you're for the vaccines. So could you just elaborate on that for a minute?
Well, over the past few years, there's been a lot of conversation and a lot of research done. And I've read both. I've done shows on it. Right off the top of my head, I can't tell you what my source was at the time for not finding any evidence that autism, which has always been around, and has now come into recognition. Because people with mental or emotional developmental issues were sort of cast aside and put into one basket and called horrible names, such as imbeciles and this and that. So we know more. We know that OCD, whoever understood what OCD was.
Right.
And now everybody has OCD. How about ADD, ADHD? All these things are now labeled, but they've always been around. And now we want to say that when you give a vaccine to a child at an early age, their immune system may not be able to handle it. And in some cases, minuscule, that may be true. I know that there have been studies done in Sweden and overseas. They have not found any correlation between vaccine and autism.
Wow. Oh.
So, there is no data to support that.
Wow.
There's been a lot of parents that fought and are terrified, but it's almost like a word of mouth panic.
Mm-hmm. Next topic. Mm-hmm. The sandwich generation. What do you have to say about the sandwich generation?
The sandwich generation is the baby boomers. And it's people in midlife, primarily people that are stuck between raising their own family, ending up with aging parents. They probably married later, started their family later. It's much more common to be married in your late 20s and have children in your early 30s nowadays than it was when I was a girl. But they end up with aging parents who are being kept alive by medications. I mean, no one's dying at 52 like my husband's father from a heart attack, or my father at 63. And they're given tremendous amount of medication, and they live long, maybe not so great lives. And the sandwich generation, the people in the middle, end up having to care, either financially or physically, care for their aging parents, worry about their own family. They may be working full time. And sometimes, because we have 50% divorce rate, not only do they end up with their aging parents' problems, they end up with their children's problems because they become single and they are now helping to take care of grandchildren. It's really pretty scary, and we need to think more about preparing for the fact that we're all living longer, and we need to be prepared to take care of ourselves as we age and find a solution that does not weigh on the shoulders of our children.
Yeah, well, that's where caregiving comes in. And I know that you spend a lot of time speaking to people on caregiving.
Caregiving is we all end up being caregivers at some point or another. If you're parents, you're a caregiver. And 10 to 1, you will either need to be taken care of by a caregiver at some point, or you will be a caregiver twice, 3 times over with your parents or your grandchildren. So it's an art. It's extremely exhausting, and it really jeopardizes the health of the caregiver. There's a tremendous amount of stress involved. So I really want to say, understand the burden that is placed on the sandwich generation.
Wow. Wow. Well, listen, we're coming to the end of our show, and I can't thank you enough for taking time from your busy schedule to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. You are wonderful. I know that you will be hugely successful as you keep going like this, and you touch on all the different things that people love, sports, whether it's your mother, her life, and what she feels. You're a winner.
Thank you, Myra. I love to talk to people. That's what I do every day, and I love to help and talk, and any way that I can help people, I love to do that. And what I'm doing with you is just the experience today has just been inspiring and just a lot of fun. And I thank you very much for, in the short time, becoming my friend as well. And I look forward to seeing you when I come down to Florida.
As I do as well. And thank you for the opportunity.
You know, I want everybody to know Myra Goldick, once again, MYRA Goldick, GOLDICK.com. As I said, this show could have just gone on for 3 to 5 hours. One of the most incredible, remarkable ladies I've ever met. And she's made my top 10 list, as I told you earlier, of most inspirational, respected people in my life. When you have a chance to go online to her website, see some of her videos, possibly consider her as a guest speaker, read some of her books, just one of the most inspiring stories of adversity that I have ever come across in my life. So on that note, Myra, thanks for being with us today. Anthony, I told you were going to meet quite a lady today, and I want to hear from all our listeners. Our listeners can reach out to us with the free text number for U.S. residents. It's 631-372-8849. That's 631-372-8849. We'd love to hear from you. Include your name and location, and we will mention you on the show. Please don't forget to like us on Facebook and to hit the subscribe button on the show's YouTube channel. If you would like to leave a comment, use the box below. If you would like to share your story or any of your ideas and be a guest on the show, please go to deanblechman.com and email me directly. I would like to thank all my listeners for being with us today. From all of us at the Dean Blechman Show, have a great day.
You've been listening to The Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island, New York. From all of us here, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. We look forward to hearing your comments via Facebook, Twitter, Skype, and email. And don't forget, you can visit the webpage anytime for the up-and-coming guest list. From all of us here, have a good evening.